I regret to inform you that Don Lemon, formerly of CNN and now of some Substack podcast, is in fact a racist. Don Lemon hates white people. Here's his latest episode. And as you listen to what he has to say about white men in particular, I want you to just imagine what the reaction would be if any podcaster or streamer who looks like me used these exact words, but instead of saying white people, I said any other race. What would the reaction be? Here's Don Lemon.
Men who look like you, men who vote like you, and men who sound like you. White men, something is broken. Something is cracked deep inside when so many of you believe the answer to fear, to loss, to change is violence. Are you listening to me? I hope I'm saying it loud enough for the people in the back.
Wow, that's some compelling content there. He's got quite a way with his audience. Okay, so white people, there's something broken. He actually doubled down and went further. Watch.
Wake up, white men. What the fuck is wrong with you? But you're too dumb to even realize that because you're lazy and sitting in front of a computer or a phone and you're just eating it up. Oh, my God, look at what they're doing. All of a sudden, my heritage is going to be over. That I want to live in a country where their white kids go to white schools and white people marry each other. What is wrong with that? I want to grow up in the country that my great-grandfather grew up in. That country doesn't exist anymore, asshole. Wake up, white men. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Did you do the little thought experiment? Did you imagine it was a podcaster who looks like me or a streamer who looks like me, and I changed the race from white men to any other race out there? What would happen? What would the reaction be? What would our sponsors do? How is he able to do this? Empowered to do this? Celebrated for doing this? Honestly, I think the most disconcerting and disturbing part of this entire episode is the comments of support from his viewers and supporters and members. There's an audience for this. It's small, it's hateful, but it's there. Don Lemon believes white people, and he kept saying white men, not some white men, not certain white men, white men. White men have something wrong with them. White men are basically evil. White men suck. By the way, I don't know if you knew this about Don Lemon, but when he's done with his show at the end of a long, hard day, and he goes home to the loving arms of his spouse, it's this guy. Is he acting out some sort of, passive aggressive problems that he's having with his own gay relationship because he has to go home to a white man? Is he being abusive to Don or something? Is this guy like some horrible man, and instead of confronting him about how racist and evil he is, he's decided to just act out and say that all white men are like that? Don, show us on the doll where this guy has hurt you. We want to help you through this. Don Lemon has decided that white men suck. And then when he goes home, well, I mean, you can finish that joke yourself. When Don Lemon wasn't spewing his own racist hatred, he decided to bring on Ilhan Omar to do the same. Here's what she had to say. Button down now and get ready. It's not good.
I have nothing to apologize for. It is a tragedy that Charlie Kirk was killed in that way. I feel for his widow and his children. They will have to live with that for the rest of their lives. But there is no legacy to honor. It was a legacy filled with bigotry, hatred, and white supremacy. Mm-hmm. And as a Black woman and as a Muslim in this country, I refuse to join the chorus that change is the history of what is on the record from this man. And so, Nancy Mace, the president, like whatever, these crazy people can do whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
But I am not going to be bullied into complacency, into, dishonoring who I am and what I stand for just to, make them feel comfortable.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
I do
I
love
have nothing to
Don Lemon listening to all of that and just saying, yeah, you're right. Yeah. Ilhan Omar worrying about being bullied is pretty rich, considering that's her entire MO and business model is to bully others, usually over race or ethnicity or religion or politics or what have you, but that's what she does. But let's be clear here. Ilhan Omar is who she is. I don't expect her to change. But she's been saying this about Charlie Kirk for a week now. She's been invited on show after show after show after show. On the same day as Charlie Kirk's memorial this past Sunday, Dana Bash of CNN deliberately booked her on her show to say this about Charlie Kirk on that day. Everyone knows what Ilhan Omar thinks about Charlie Kirk. Everyone knows what Ilhan Omar feels about Charlie Kirk. And what she thinks and feels about those of us who know Charlie Kirk or worked with Charlie Kirk or support Charlie Kirk or feel grieving about Charlie Kirk. We know what Ilhan Omar has to say. Here it is, 3 weeks later now, and Don Lemon decides, you know what we need to do? We need to get Ilhan Omar on the show. We need to make sure that our podcast has Ilhan Omar, and then I'll ask her a question about Charlie Kirk and whether she should apologize for what she said, because we can just keep this storyline going even further, and we'll give more attention to Ilhan Omar so that she can repeat again and again and again the same hateful garbage about Charlie Kirk. That was a programming choice from Don Lemon and the whole team over there at the Don Lemon Show. But Don Lemon is worried about you white man, and how hateful and incendiary and divisive you are, while he picks up the phone and books Ilhan Omar for another great segment. I wish I could say that this was just an outlier and it's Don Lemon and he's pathetic and he doesn't matter and he has no impact and he has no influence, and all of those things are true. But while this was happening on his lamentable show, over there at the New York Times, which I think might have more impact, Ezra Klein hosted this guy, Ta-Nehisi Coates, who has not seen a racial division that he hasn't split wide open and fomented. He hasn't seen a bonfire with regard to race that he hasn't thrown gasoline on. And so, of course, Ezra Klein wanted to know what Ta-Nehisi Coates thought about race in America today and, of course, Charlie Kirk.
I don't take any joy in saying this, but we sometimes soothe ourselves by pointing out that love, acceptance, warmth, that these are powerful forces. I believe they are. I also believe hate is a powerful force. I believe it's a powerful, powerful unifying force. And I think Charlie Kirk was a hate monger. I really need to say this over and over again. I have a politic that rejects violence, that rejects political violence. I take no joy in the killing of anyone, no matter what they said. But if you ask me what the truth of his life was, and the truth of his public life, I would have to tell you it's hate. I would tell you I'd have to tell you it is the usage of hate and the harnessing of hate towards political ends.
It's pronounced ask. Say it with me. Ask. An axe is a noun. That's a tool used to chop down a tree or to kill people if you're in one of the Friday 13th horror movies. That's an axe. I think what you're trying to say is ask. Ask. The S comes before the K. Thank you for your attention to this matter. That's the New York Times. That's the New York Times deciding to elevate this hate monger's opinion about Charlie Kirk up onto their brand and up onto their fine reputation. I'm sorry, did he say that he has a politic that doesn't support violence? Because I remember the George Floyd riots that he was, almost literally fanning the flames of as buildings were burning in this country. He might as well have lit the fuse on the Molotov cocktails that were thrown into business owners, black business owners, businesses in downtown St. Louis and Los Angeles and Detroit and Baltimore and Washington, D.C. and any other city in a predominantly black neighborhood, that this guy was just fine screaming no justice, no peace as those cities were burning down. But he has a politic of no violence ever. Yeah, sure. A friend of this program, Mark Halperin, who we had on a week ago for a long-form interview, he responded to Ta-Nehisi Coates yesterday in real time. He appeared on Emily Jasinski's After Party podcast, and she played the clip you just saw. Halperin had not seen it. And when asked to respond to it, I think he speaks for a lot of us here. I'll let him take it.
I'd like to extend the presumption of grace to people. And, that guy was not speaking on teleprompter. He was speaking off the top of his head. So maybe he regrets saying what he said, but fuck him. Because this man was not a hater. Just manifestly not. And there's so much evidence on the public record. You didn't have to know him personally to know that he wasn't a hater. Disagree with him. Charlie said some things I didn't disagree with. He said some things I didn't particularly fancy, but he was not a hater. And he's got a widow and 2 young kids and so many friends who loved him. And this guy's on the national town square talking bullshit about someone he didn't know and saying really hurtful things. And the reason it matters, besides that it reflects that the New York Times will give a microphone to someone so ignorant, is because this is what's wrong with the desire for people to make money and get acclaim off of saying false, negative things about people they don't know.
Yeah, and I couldn't have said it better myself, and that's why Mark Halperin is, in fact, a friend of this program. Let me just say, we criticize Democrats all the time here. And by the way, Mark, I don't know how he registers politically, but I can tell you he and I do not agree on a lot of politics. But Mark Halperin at least shows some sense of decency here at this moment and recognizes a hate-mongering charlatan when he sees one, and that's Ta-Nehisi Coates. And Ezra Klein, who, by the way, has gotten a lot of attention lately for the New York Times for his podcast because he's trying to sort of resurrect the dead body that is liberal Democrats in this country by trying to speak sense and trying to fix them. No, I'm sorry. The fact that he had Ta-Nehisi Coates there and he thoughtfully nodded along with this kind of despicable content tells you that no, it can't be fixed. And if it is fixed, it's certainly not Ezra Klein who's going to be doing the fixing. In fact, let me show you this moment. As if hating and dividing us over race wasn't enough, Ezra Klein also had plenty to say with Ta-Nehisi Coates about the trans issue. You're going to love this. Take a look.
Right. A majority of the country believes things about trans people, about what policy should be towards trans people, about what language is acceptable to trans people, that we would see as fundamentally and morally wrong.
Right.
And what politically, not in a column or something, but politically, should our relationship with those people be? Do we win them over? Do we compromise with them? This feels like a very salient question. The Republican Party is going to make sure this is a relentlessly salient question.
Right.
So
I agree with that.
Where does...
By the way, I just got to jump in here. When he says the Republican Party is going to make sure that this is a salient question, maybe. I wish the Republican Party was smart enough to do that. But I can tell you that just normies here, not speaking for the party, not running for office, but I do want to know from every single person running for office the answer to a couple of simple questions. Can a man get pregnant? Can a man change their sex and suddenly become a woman? Should anyone born with male parts be allowed to get changed and take off their clothes in front of an 11-year-old girl against her consent? Should she be forced to use public spaces and get undressed in front of a biological man without her consent? Yes. Yes, Ezra. Those are salient questions. You're going to have an answer to them. But instead of actually grappling with the reality of those questions and the fact that 80% of America, if not more, finds the issue reprehensible and disgusting and completely unsafe for our daughters, instead of facing that, this is their solution.
Does the approach leave us, right? Where do we go on that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. Look, I think a couple things. I think, again, look, my tradition is the only thing I have a reference point for, so I'm sorry to keep going back to this. But when I look at the times that we have lost, if I think specifically about the Black tradition, for instance, it's hard for me to say politically they did something wrong. You know what I mean? Like, Reconstruction falls. What was the thing that should have been done?
Right.
He goes on to give a nonsensical answer and basically tries to make it a racial issue. But the fact that Ezra Klein even asked that question, and the sole basis and focus of the question is conservatives won't adopt our thought police and language police by calling biological men trans women. Right. And what do we do about that? Well, watch again how he frames the question.
A majority of the country believes things about trans people, about what policy should be towards trans people, about what language is acceptable to trans people, that like we would see as fundamentally and morally wrong.
Right.
And what politically, not in a column or something, but politically, should our relationship with those people be?
What should our relationship with those people, the majority of our country, that he concedes it's the majority of the country, who won't accept their politics, their activism, their policies, and even the language when it comes to, no, I'm sorry, he and she means something. Truth matters. Male and female are defined biologically and genetically. And there's no skirting that. And you may have plastic surgery and cosmetic surgery and radical alterations through pharmaceuticals and through chopping things off or adding things in to make you appear to be something other than you were born. But that doesn't change the fundamental truth of how you were born and how you still are biologically made up. And Ezra Klein's, but so you add all of this again between the race issue and the sex issue and the truth issue here. There is no reaching an agreement when you're dealing with people who just want to throw hate at you for believing fundamental truths. And speaking of hate, let's round this segment out with Joy Reid because she just won't go away.
Is that if you go back before the 20th century, there were no income taxes, there were no regulations on business. You could earn as much money as you want, leave 100% of it to your children with no taxes. Right. That's the world they want back. And to get it back, they need society to change. They need people to be less modern. They need people to want fewer things.
Wait. I think we can work with this. In fact, I'm thinking I'm seeing an ad for 2026 midterms and the 2028 presidential election. This is Joy Reid painting this dystopian horror picture of what life would be like if we had just a few more years fundamentally changing the American system of government. What would that look like?
Is that if you go back before the 20th century, there were no income taxes, there were no regulations on business. You could earn as much money as you want, leave 100% of it to your children with no taxes. Right. That's the world they want back. And
my name's JD Vance, and I approve this message. Are you kidding me? She's actually telling you that world that she just painted is problematic and something that they have to resist. Just so you all know, I think the majority of Americans would be happy with that world. No income taxes, make as much money as you want, leave all of it to your children. And no, if not at least reduced regulations on governments. I believe I at some point in this segment, I said that it's very hard to reach agreement with these people on the left. I think we have found the place of agreement. You are right, Joy Reid. That is, in fact, the world we want to go back to. And little by little, we're getting there. And that's a wonderful thing, actually. It'll be wonderful for you. Wonderful for everyone. Okay, we have agreement. And by the way, it speaks volumes that is her idea of a nightmare. Great. At least we know where we all stand and we're not lying about it anymore. Let's just all get on board and have that conversation. I'm confident with how it'll work out.